Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the channel. Today we have a pretty special video because TaylorMade are bringing out a new set of irons. In this video, I'm going to be taking you through everything we currently know about these irons, the looks, the new technology in them, the possible price of them, when they'll be released, and everything you guys need to know. If you might be thinking about buying these, I personally like to keep up to date on new releases. It's just interesting to see new products come into the market, especially at this time when so few products are actually coming out. First of all, take a look at these irons and see what you think. As you can see, they are called the P7MB Irons. If you haven't seen these already, these images are pretty recent. They were found in Charlie Hull's bag in a tour event in the UK. By the way, if you guys are enjoying this video, do remember to subscribe to my channel, give it a like, and comment your thoughts down below. I'd love to know what you guys think of these irons. They look pretty good at first look. I think the finish of them looks great. The style of them looks pretty cool. Overall, first impressions, massive thumbs up. It's been a long time since TaylorMade brought out a bladed iron. You know, you're talking, I think it's like 4 years since the P730s came out. That's a long time. And this is probably the only time anyone has ever said this product launch from TaylorMade might be overdue. I personally got fit for a full set of TaylorMade clubs last year. Honestly, I wanted to get some blades. I really wanted to get some blades. I just felt I couldn't get the P730 irons. They were so old to the market. 4 years in golf technology terms, that's a long time. Most brands are bringing out new clubs either every year or every 2 years, and whether we agree with that as consumers or not, that is just the reality of the current marketplace. So let's go through these irons. What do we think of the looks, first of all? Well, I think the finish on them looks great. Obviously, we do have the P7TW irons that came out after the P730s, and it's kind of interesting because this actually looks like the next iteration of that. If I throw these up on the screen for you guys to have a look at, and just have a look at, it goes P730 into P7TW and now into P7MB. You're getting rid of that milling, you're getting more of that satin finish on the back, which I personally think looks great. I think it looks really modern, really clean, which if you're buying a bladed iron, personally, I want it to look modern and clean. It's like the two things you really look for. Also, one interesting thing to note is these have a much rounder shape than the P7TWs. Obviously, the P7TWs were brought out with Tiger Woods as a limited run of an iron. You couldn't get custom fit for them unless you like bought a set and took it to a shop and then messed around with shafts, but you couldn't go and get fit for them and order them in the shafts you wanted. They came as standard in that setup because they were like a specialty limited release product. Whereas these obviously are not. You're going to be able to get custom fit for them. I can guarantee that. You're going to be able to get the lofts and lies and everything you want. The shape of these is definitely rounder than the P7TWs because Tiger Woods likes a very square looking iron. He likes the kind of flat shape of it and it to have a pretty square head profile. And he also likes the kind of length of it to vary from the short to the long irons, which I wouldn't expect this to vary as much. One thing to note with the looks, and I bet you guys didn't notice this when you had that first glance at these irons, but if you take a closer look, have a look at the shape of the back of these irons. If you notice, there's kind of a weird indentation sticking out. It's like almost like a triangular shape that is kind of sticking out the backs of these irons. It's very difficult to tell from this image because we can't see it side on, but it doesn't look like the shape gets any bigger or any smaller, really, going kind of up or down the bag, which is really interesting. Obviously, the shape is kind of in chrome, and then you've got the polished satin around it, which again, I really like the look of. I think it does look great. The only thing I do find with chrome is it does tend to like get a bit dinged up quite quickly, and then it doesn't look like you've got a new set of golf clubs a few months later. Whereas I think the satin, I think that all looks great. I kind of almost in some ways wish they'd maybe gone all satin, or I don't know, maybe just a different finish. I'm not sure what else they could have put there, but that's what it is. And, you know, it looks cool. But this shaping on the back, that's not something we've actually really seen before from a blade. And I have one concern. If I'm playing a bladed iron, personally, I really like to have a very sleek look at the top of the ball. I actually do play bladed irons, and these are the irons that I play. I play the Mcilroy'S MB001 blades, which are a pretty small blade. If you look down the line, if I can show you here, this is actually the 3 iron. It's pretty small. I mean, it's a pretty small look, but I am playing blades and I like that look. I like the sleek top line. I like that you can't really see the back of the iron. There's not much there. It just looks good to me personally. And that's the one concern I have with these irons, because it looks like they've got that kind of chunk sticking out the back. I'm not sure how visible that's going to be looking down at the ball from the top line. I would imagine TaylorMade have made it so that you can't see it. It is a bit of a worry for me, and I would imagine some images will come out soon that will show us the top line and that will maybe solve this dispute. But I think if you can see it, and if it is noticeable, I think that could hurt sales. I think you buy a blade really because it's a sexy looking golf club. You don't really buy a blade because you want that feel of safety and forgiveness. You buy it because it looks good. How many people buying these irons are going to be tour players? None, because tour players get their irons for free. The people who are going to be buying these irons, primarily, yeah, they want them to perform, but it's a bladed iron. There's not really that much like difference in performance. You want them to feel great, and you want them to look great, and you want them to look great down at the ball. That's my one concern for the looks of them. Now let's talk about the new technology in these irons. If you're familiar with the P7MB irons, they put some tungsten in there to help increase forgiveness and do a bit of other stuff with the weight of the club. And I would imagine these clubs would have tungsten in them as well. I can't imagine TaylorMade would kind of go back a step and say, right, we're not putting tungsten in these. And maybe that's where it could come into the shape of these irons as well. Maybe that back panel they've kind of created has some form of tungsten filling or plating or something in it to help with forgiveness or feel or distance or whatever it might be. Another thing to note is the P7MB irons, they weren't the softest blades. Tiger Woods doesn't like super soft blades. He likes something that feels quite solid, and that's what they were. I've hit them before. They felt really good, really solid. They weren't like a Mizuno in which they were just like absolute butter. It'll be interesting to note the feel of these. I would imagine if they've kept that tungsten in them, and if they've kind of kept that trend, that they'll again have a more solid feel. I can't imagine them trying to compete with Mizuno, trying to create that absolute soft, buttery feel. I think these will be a more solid feel, but time will tell. We'll have to wait and see how they feel when we hit them. Obviously, they're not milled. They have that rounder profile. They have the shape of the back. These look kind of a million miles away from the P730 irons. You'd almost expect another generation or two of blades to be between these, because they look very different as they're getting rid of that milled process, which is interesting because that's a process they then brought into their wedges and have kind of continued throughout their wedges. So it's interesting that they're getting rid of that and going for this new kind of sleeker finish. And I think it does look great. It's probably the right kind of decision to go down that route. Now, price. Let's talk about what the price of these irons could be. I just looked up all the prices for the current P730s and P7TW irons. Now, the P7TWs, I think they started around £2,000 or around kind of £1,900. At the moment, you can buy a set for £1,700. The P730s was weirdly hard to find a price on. Obviously, another clear indication that TaylorMade are bringing out this launch. The few websites I did find a price on, they were around £1,000. Maybe just under, depending where you were looking. There was a few used sets for about £650 or something, but they were around £1,000 for a new set. And you couldn't actually buy them on a lot of websites, which was really interesting to see. Where do I think these will come out starting at launch? I think these will be between the two. I think these will be over £1,000. I think these will be less than the P7TWs, but not by much. I think they'll be £1,400 or £1,500 when they come out retail. And there's a very good reason why. If you're familiar with my channel, last year I interviewed the managing director for TaylorMade in Europe, in the UK. That is the top guy this side of the Atlantic. Like, you're talking the second or third highest person in the whole of the TaylorMade kind of business. I had a very honest discussion with him about price. Why has price gone up of the clubs? And he gave me an interesting answer. The price has gone up of the clubs because the cost of making the clubs has actually gone up. That includes the cost of the materials, the cost of the labor in terms of creating the finishes that they're designing on these clubs, and obviously the new higher tech and more expensive materials that are going into them. Is that right? Because you can kind of say that, well, TaylorMade are designing the clubs, they're deciding the materials that go into them, they're designing the finishes, so they know they're going to be making the clubs more expensive. Well, yeah, they probably do, but they have to compete with the rest of the market that's doing the same thing. They have to bring out the best possible golf clubs they can. And that's probably why we're not really going to see much of a shortage of, golf clubs going up in price, especially clubs which have these kind of custom finishes with the satin and the chrome, and there's a lot of detail there, isn't there? And, throwing tungsten in there as well, that's a relatively expensive material. And then you've got R&D costs and everything else as well, and they need to be making a profit in order to keep growing their business. When will these clubs actually be released? I would imagine the announcement to come out in August sometime. I would imagine mid to late August they'll be announced. That means you'll be able to buy them more towards the end of the year. I would say, custom fittings from maybe October onwards. And this is kind of interesting because it's kind of not really a time of year that you typically see golf clubs being released, especially by TaylorMade. Normally TaylorMade makes its announcements in January and maybe late December. Then they kind of roll out the product in kind of, January, February, April, May, possibly April. You start getting custom fit and you can get your products by March and enjoy them for the golf season. Obviously, this year's been a bit different with everything that's been going on in the world. We don't need to talk about it, but the question is, were these products actually meant to come out earlier? Were the P7MB Irons meant to be released at the beginning of the summer? Were they meant to be released a few months ago? And has this been held off until golf has resumed? Because you have to admit, the timing of it is pretty spot on. Golf has just started again. People are getting back into it. More courses are open. People are going back to normal. They're going back to work, so they're going to have more money to then spend on golf clubs. So I would guess this wasn't the initial time frame that TaylorMade set out to complete. I would guess they've pushed this back and they've kept the product out of the tour players' bags to kind of further the mystery of what the new product's going to be, and so have a later announcement. And you know, they're probably not going to want to push an announcement a whole year, which I guess makes sense with future product releases. So now the question that most of you need to answer is, should you buy them? It's a good question. We can't really answer it until we've hit them. We can't really answer it until we know more about them. But we can speculate about it a little bit. They're going to be expensive. Are they going to perform any better than other clubs out there which could cost less? Probably not. Are they going to look great? Yeah, probably. Are they going to feel great? Yeah, probably. Are they going to perform? Yes, probably. Are they going to sell? That's the question. And the biggest thing for me is that shape on the back. I think it's going to be a love it or hate it thing, and we're going to need to see some more angles of the clubs before we can really answer that. But it's still fun to talk about these things and to speculate and to give you guys some information as well on what's going to be coming out. Maybe you want to hold off on buying the latest Callaway's or whatever in order to see what TaylorMade come out with and if you should be putting them in your bag or not. So guys, I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, smash that like button, comment your thoughts down below, and of course subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on Instagram too, Mike's 3D Life. And I'll see you guys in the next video. I'll bring you guys out some more later product releases once we know a bit more about these products, and some review videos as well once we can get some into my hands and hitting some balls. I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy, and remember, as always, grip it and rip it.